Hello, friends. Craig Ballard, Locked On Blue Jays, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Today's episode brought to you by HelloFresh. Skip trips to the grocery store and count on HelloFresh to make home cooking easy, fun, and affordable. On today's Locked On Blue Jays, thrilled to be joined by Fox MLB analyst and host of the Flipping Bats podcast, Ben Verlander. Ben drops by to talk a bunch of different Toronto Blue Jay topics, including thoughts on this current Blue Jays-Astros series.
You are Locked On Blue Jays, your daily Toronto Blue Jays podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
I am Craig Ballard. I am Locked On Blue Jays. I am thankful that you're choosing to spend part of your day talking Toronto Blue Jay baseball with me. The YouTube subscribers are growing. Recently seen some new subscribers, people like Rami Karam, Jeremy V, Jake Irwin, Devin Lavoie. Want to thank all of you, and friends, family members, coworkers that are Toronto Blue Jay fans. Hey, help spread the word. Put the podcast in their hands as well. For the everydayers, and I see in the comments sections like Dub Nugs and Jason Chung, I see you and I thank you. I appreciate you. And for those of you who are making Locked On Blue Jays your first podcast listen every day, I see that and I really appreciate and thank you for that as well. On today's episode, we dive into several different Toronto Blue Jay topics with Ben Verlander, whose Flipping Bats podcast currently has your Toronto Blue Jays number 5 in the power rankings. Drop a comment and let me know what you thought of this conversation. Craig Ballard, Locked On Blue Jays, absolutely thrilled to be joined by Ben Verlander. Ben Verlander, Fox Sports MLB analyst, and of course, the Flipping Bats podcast. Well, I was going to say spoiler. It's not a spoiler. We want you to know a new episode of that did drop earlier today. Now, we're taping this on a Monday, so by the time you see this segment, it's the Tuesday. Hopefully, you've already checked that out. Real quick, I'm going to listen to the rest of it later today. Looking forward to it. But I did skim to see the power rankings, right? Because I'm very interested in this. So we will get into some of that because there were some changes in your power rankings that do pertain to the Toronto Blue Jays. And we'll get there in a moment here. But Ben, first of all, I just want to say hello and thank you for your time.
Of course. Thanks for having me. I appreciate it. This will be fun.
And let's do a real quick tour here, because how can I not? We got a Shaq jersey in the background. We got an Al Kaline jersey in the background. How can I not get a quick tour here? What's the story there?
So the Shaq jersey, the Super Bowl that was in New York years ago, went to that game. We were all in the same suite, and he brought some jerseys and signed one for me. So that's actually personalized. It says To Ben, and he signed it. And the Al Kaline one, I was actually fortunate enough to be pretty close to Mr. Kaline while I was playing in the Tigers organization. And we would often, eat lunch together. He would tell stories. We got pretty close. And I saw him for the last time about a month or so before he passed away in Detroit. And he signed that jersey for me at that time. So it's a very near and dear possession to my heart for sure.
So I'm happy with my instincts of asking you that, because I loved both of those stories. And I assume, Ben, that Shaq has an autographed Ben Verlander jersey. I assume it went both ways.
He didn't ask for one, but I sent him one anyway later. So I'm sure it's hanging up in his house right now. Yeah.
He was starstruck in that moment, Ben. Let's be honest. He was starstruck in that moment.
That's probably why he didn't ask. Yeah. He was too starstruck. Yeah.
Understandable. Now, Ben, I want to get into some baseball talk with you and really want to dream big with the first question here. What if I were to say to you, Ben, that I've actually come back from the future and I can actually tell you that the Toronto Blue Jays win the 2023 World Series? What's your initial reaction to that, Ben? If I say that to you, you're thinking to yourself, well, if that's the case, Craig, then X must have gone really well. What's that X for you for the Blue Jays to really, because I think this Blue Jay team is one of a handful of teams that truly should have a World Series or bust outlook for this season. So what would you say, Ben? Then what must have really gone well is this.
My reaction would be first that I'm not shocked. I picked the Blue Jays to win the AL East, which is arguably the best division in baseball, meaning they'd beat the Yankees and beat the Rays. And then it really becomes a battle of, at that point, can you beat the Astros in the playoffs? And I certainly think they're capable of doing it. So what I would say went right is the pitching started clicking. I'm not worried about the pitching. We're not even 20 games in.
Yeah.
The reason I believed in this team to win the AL East is because the top 3 in that rotation are very, very good. And Manoah and Gausman are elite. And I do believe they will get back to that form that is elite. I know Manoah hasn't started out in Cy Young form, but I believe he can get there. Jordan Romano back into the bullpen is great. So what I would say is that means they picked up some pretty good middle relief arms at the trade deadline. I think their team is close. I think the one thing they're missing is, a top 7, 8th inning guy. And I know Pop's been good to start the year. They've had some good arms, but can you rely on those guys all year long to bridge the gap from the starters to Jordan Romano? I would like to see them add another piece in that bullpen, but all the pieces are there for them to be a World Series champion team.
Now, Ben, when you talk about the back end of that bullpen, they make the Teo trade to bring in Swanson as well. Zach Pop, some CanCon, right? Ben, just as a side note, how thrilled would I be if Canadian Zach Pop is the 8th inning guy and Canadian Jordan Romano is the 9th inning guy for the Canadian team Toronto? I mean, that sort of writes itself, right? Like, that would be so cool. I would love that.
Yeah, it's so cool. The storylines really are writing themselves. That's why I say I wouldn't be shocked if it were to happen this year, because it'd be like the perfect story. Not a new stadium, but completely new renovations there. Canadian guys back into the bullpen. It'd be cool.
Now, and when you talk about the back of that bullpen, because Nate Pearson, and I know this isn't a conversation for the faint of heart for Blue Jay fans, because this is like the 4th, 5th year in a row we're saying, hey, could Nate Pearson contribute? But he is doing well in AAA in the minors right now. Ricky Tiedemann is just an absolute, he's his own house of fire. Do you think, Ben, because even Pearson, even though he's had some major league experience, that would still be really a rookie campaign to bring him up late in the season, to bring up a Tiedemann late in the season. Do you think guys like that with such little major league experience, but with stuff that plays, do you think that that's along the lines of what you're talking about, Ben? Are you saying, you know what, Craig, no, for a real World Series contender, because now you're going to have to go through the Yankees, the Rays, and the Astros in the playoffs, for this Jays team to be a real World Series contender, Craig, it is going to have to be more like a trade deadline move, an actual veteran coming in.
I don't think it needs to be that. I think it could be a guy like, and this is the difference maker you see every year with a team, is just having somebody like that. So Pearson, obviously a guy with elite stuff and could be a starter, or he could be a guy that you bring in out of relief in the playoffs if he's pitching well, and he could be that kind of arm that, for me, the name I think about is how, at the time it was the Indians, the now Guardians, used Andrew Miller in that bullpen in their playoff run, eating up 2-3 innings there. Okay, our starter's done in the 5th. Let's have him go out and throw 3 innings and get to the closer. So a guy like that, it doesn't necessarily need to be a veteran guy, just somebody that's able to do that. And if he's as dominant as I believe he can be, I know he hasn't done it in the major leagues yet, but if he can come up and be that guy, that's the piece I'm talking about. That's the piece it feels like they need. Look at the Astros and why they've had so much success in the playoffs. Very good lineup, a lot of playoff experience. But their bullpen last year was the best bullpen in all of baseball, not just a good closer. They have guys to bridge the gap. If you need a guy in the 6th, 7th, or 8th inning, they're there. So having that guy, I think, is vital. And I would love for it to be a guy like Pearson. I would rather it be a guy like Pearson than a guy via a trade. I think that'd be invaluable, and I'm hopeful it happens. And just because he's come up before and not had success doesn't mean he can. The guy had all that hype for a reason. Look at Jared Kelenic and what he's doing this year for the Mariners. Mm-hmm. And I know it's still a small sample size, and he may not go on to have a good year. I hope he does, but he didn't have any success in the big leagues before. And this year he's come up with a completely revamped approach, looks good, and is having success. And maybe we could see that from a guy like Nate Pearson.
We've seen, Mike Trout come up and have to be sent down in our own backyard here in Toronto. Carlos Delgado come up and have to be sent down. Like, just because you don't get it right away, it's a great point. Ben, it was such a good answer that I'm just going to let it slide, because bringing up Andrew Miller, the 2016 Indians, what they did to the Blue Jays in the playoffs, it's still too soon. It is still too soon, good sir, but I'm going to let that one slide. But I absolutely love that call. And you know what's funny, Ben, is they're stretching out Pearson in the minors. They're trying to have him be that 2-inning guy, exactly what you just said, that Swiss Army knife. We need someone to bridge the 5th and the 6th. You say Barrios not having a good start. We need a 5th and a 6th. Call down for Nate Pearson. We need somebody to bridge. Hey, Yimi Garcia, Swanson, these guys have pitched the last couple of days. We need somebody to bridge to Romano for the 7th and 8th. Get Nate Pearson on the line. Get Nate Pearson warmed up. So I'm really liking that a lot. Coming up on Locked On Blue Jays, more from our conversation with Ben Verlander. And on tomorrow's episode, I'll get you set for the series finale in Houston as Jose Barrios takes on Luis Garcia. And our new sponsor, So Rare, is a revolutionary fantasy baseball game and marketplace transforming fans into owners with officially licensed digital cards featuring players from across all 30 MLB teams. So Rare MLB game weeks happen twice weekly and span a 3 to 4 day cycle. At the end of the game weeks, So Rare MLB managers who rank near or at the top of their leaderboards win a variety of rewards that can include So Rare scarcity cards, game tickets, merchandise, signed jerseys, VIP experiences like meeting MLB stars. Prizes may depend on the competition. Now, speaking of MLB stars, So Rare has recently partnered with MLB stars Juan Soto and Julio Rodriguez to serve as brand ambassadors. Both are featured in So Rare's current brand campaign and will engage with So Rare community throughout the season at MLB events. So head to sorare.com/lockedon. That's spelled SORARE.com to draft your team of free player cards, set your lineup, and start competing today to win epic rewards. Again, that's sorare.com/lockedon to start playing today. Now, we mentioned earlier that the new episode of Flipping Bats podcast is out today. So the power rankings are there. And I'm very fascinated here, Ben, by what you're going to walk us through here, because I've heard you a few times praise the Toronto Blue Jays. Hey, when the dust settles, the 2023 American League East division winners will be the Toronto Blue Jays. But every week in the power rankings, this week included, you've got the Blue Jays, and then one step ahead, you've got the Yankees, and one step ahead, you've got Tampa. So in your own power rankings right now, you've got the Jays third in that division. So sort of how early, I certainly get that. And I mean, how on earth would you not, even the Jays taking 2 out of 3 from Tampa? How would you not have Tampa up there? I certainly get it. But going forward, because according to you, Ben, we are going to see movement, right? The Blue Jays are going to climb that mountain. How do you see the American League East playing out to the point where the Blue Jays do win this division?
So to start the year, this is, I think, the third week of them. The first week of the year, I did have the Blue Jays ahead of all of those teams. Obviously, nobody could have seen the Rays going 13-0 to start the year. So naturally, they have to jump everybody. But the reason for me that I've kept it the way it is right now, and right now I have the Yankees and Blue Jays right there neck and neck. For me, the reason I picked the Blue Jays to win the AL East is not because of their lineup that I believe is an elite lineup and a top 3-4 offense in the game of baseball. It's because of their pitching. It's because of Alek Manoah at the top, Gausman, Kikuchi, and I was hopeful Barrios could have a bounce back year, and Chris Bassett, the new acquisition there. So I believe their rotation had the potential to be one of the best in baseball. And to start the year, I just haven't seen it yet. And I do believe we will see it. But on the Yankees side of things, arguably the best pitcher in baseball so far has been Garrett Cole. Wow. And he's been dominant at the top of that rotation. And Manoah hasn't exactly gotten to that form yet. So the offense is there. I just want to see that rotation get to where I believe it will all season long. And when they get there, I have no doubts, which is why I picked them. They can get to the lead in that division and never look back, even though the Rays got out to quite the start. So it might take a little bit of time to catch them. And they're obviously a very good team, but a good way to catch them is by taking 2 out of 3 from them at home. So that's a good start. I believe in the team. I'm just waiting for that pitching staff to come around and be dominant. I really love what I saw from Jose Barrios the other start. It's become frustrating watching a guy with that good of stuff clearly not be able to figure it out. And I know he has been frustrated by it, but the stuff is there. You'd rather the guy have the stuff as opposed to clearly just losing everything. And the stuff has always still been there. And his start the other day was really good, and I'm hoping he can build on that. I have no doubts that Alek Manoah will get back to a Cy Young type of form, and this Blue Jays team will be good and surely climbing more and more of the power rankings.
Awesome. Greg Ballard, Locked On Blue Jays, joined by Ben Verlander of the Flipping Bats podcast and Fox MLB Sports. Blue Jays at Houston for a series. Want to get your thoughts on that, Ben, but in just a moment here, want to touch on a few things you had mentioned there. The first being that start that the Rays got off. That's my glass half full for Blue Jay fans who are like, oh my God, Rays are just doing everything. Hey, some of us lived through the 1984 season where there was no wild card. There was, you won your division or you win home. And the Detroit Tigers in the American League East started 35-5 that season, Ben. Like, are you kidding? Imagine that. Imagine a month and a half into a 6-month season and it's already jam done. So it could be worse, Blue Jay fans, when you look at the start Tampa Bay's off to. But then later on this week, the Blue Jays go to Yankee Stadium. They'll face Domingo Germán. How can I have you on, Ben, and not get your thoughts on this? What on earth can you explain anything that took? First of all, Ben, from the rule interpretation, I've never seen what was that big conversation in this warning for him to wash the hands? Isn't it supposed to be, hey, wait a minute, something's up here, you're out? And at the end of the day, when all the dust settles, Rocco Baldelli's the only one kicked out of this game. Are you kidding me right now, Ben? What were your thoughts on that? I thought it was absurd.
It was all a very bad look. And look, I don't know what the conversation was. I do know from what I saw that the umpire was telling him he needed to wash his hands, and then he still had something on his hands, and the umpire said, I told you to wash it off. And then he finally did wash something off, and the umpire said, perfect. Now, that means to me, I'm not going to sit here and say that the substance that was on his hand is or was illegal. What it says to me is that he was doing something he wasn't supposed to, because the umpire told him to take it off. And if the umpire tells you to do that and you don't, then he has every right to throw you out of the game. Now, I'm not going to wonder what it was on his hands. That's not my job to do. The optics that became bad are clearly Rocco Baldelli was frustrated, and he had every single right to be. For him to be the one person of everybody that was thrown out of that game, the umpires need to have a little bit of feel, which is something that not a ton of them do around the league right now. Have a little bit of feel and understand, okay, this situation was interesting and unique and was handled in a way that it was, meaning that Rocco Baldelli is going to be pissed off, and he has every single right to be. Maybe we should have a little bit longer of a leash and not throw him out of the game because he said something that hurt my feelings. For him to be the one person that got thrown out was ridiculous to me. But again, I don't know what was on his hand, whether it be rosin or whatever. But the fact that the umpire told Germando Walk to rinse it off and wash it off, and he didn't, and then it took a couple of innings, just a really weird situation all around.
Agreed. My goodness. Well, with Ben Verlander here now, Ben, Blue Jays at Houston. Want to get your take on this series here. By the time our conversation here airs, it'll be on Tuesday, so Gausman will have already pitched on Monday night. Now, I'm very intrigued by this series, Ben. I mean, Jays Houston, I'm intrigued. You had me at hello right there, right? Just these two teams meeting each other, but in particular, Gausman in the opener. Gausman's pitched against Houston last year in Toronto, but he's pitched at Houston as well. And what I'm so intrigued on this series, Ben, is I believe there's a bunch of Toronto Blue Jays coming into Houston this Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday that this fan base has never seen up close and personal. The last time Gausman pitched on this mound was 2017 with Baltimore. Baltimore didn't even let him use his splitter. It's now an elite pitch in all of baseball. They're seeing a different Kevin Gausman. Bo Bichette, every year the Blue Jays travel to Houston in April. Bo Bichette in April is as bad a hitter as you've ever seen in your entire life. Bo Bichette last September caught fire and has carried it over to this April. So I think this Houston fan base is about to see, who's that guy with the flow? Holy cow, he's absolutely killing it. And Vladimir Guerrero Jr. has never hit a home run in this ballpark. Like, I don't think they've seen the best of Vladdy either. I think this is a very different animal Blue Jays coming to town. Get to avoid Framber Valdez. That's a good thing. Get to avoid Hunter Brown. That's a good thing for the Blue Jays. Now, by the way, Ben, I mean, just me or is Hunter Brown out there doing his best Justin Verlander impersonation, by the way? But anywho, I'm liking the Blue Jays in this series. I think it's a different animal than this Houston team has seen. Houston seems to be scuffling to me a little bit right now. What are your thoughts on this Blue Jays Astros series?
I think this is an important series for the Blue Jays to gain some confidence, right? Like they're playing better right now. The Astros aren't playing well. Blue Jays are playing pretty well. And this is a team that, if you want to get to the World Series, you're going to have to probably go through Houston, or at least through the Astros at some point in the playoffs. And it sounds silly, but being able to go on the road and beat a team in the regular season can gain some confidence when you go back in the playoffs. So it's important. And now is the perfect time to be playing Houston. They haven't turned it on yet. Blue Jays playing well. As you mentioned, a lot of these guys have a lot to prove because they haven't been themselves in Houston before. Now they get to go in. Gausman, Bo Bichette, who you mentioned is worst hitter you've ever seen in April, which I would disagree with because in my minor league days, I had quite a few over fours in April and May and June and July. But I digress. So I'm excited to watch this series. It is two juggernaut teams in the American League, one playing better than the other, but Houston being at home. And at some point right around this time, the Astros always kick it on. And it might be a series like this that kind of everybody gets a little more up for. early in the season. It always takes somebody coming into town that to do it, and I think this is certainly the time. Hunter Brown, as you mentioned, I don't know if you know this story, but he looks eerily similar out there to Justin on the mound.
Jeez.
Justin was actually his idol growing up,
wow.
and did a lot of studying him. And obviously, if you've never watched him pitch, their motions look eerily similar. And he made his debut last year on the same team as his idol, who was my brother. And it was just a really cool story. And to see him doing what he's doing this year, I mean, last week he had 2 starts, didn't give up a run in like 14 innings. He's been dominating, but it is a really cool story there. And I didn't know if you knew like why he does look like
that's awesome
out on the mound.
Somebody that you know, Ben, has Hunter Brown on his fantasy team and is very pleased with the start he's off to. So if he's out there emulating Justin Verlander, yeah, if he's emulating Justin Verlander, that's a yes, please. Okay, that's a yes, please. Now, speaking of Justin Verlander, Ben, I want to go big game hunting. Last couple questions here with Ben Verlander from Fox MLB and from Flipping Bats podcast. Ben, I want to go big game hunting for the Toronto Blue Jays here, and you may well shoot down both of these saying, "Oh boy, Greg, did you say big game hunting or dream on?" Because let's talk about a couple players here. Now, Justin Verlander, he's under contract until I believe he's a free agent again at the age of 42. So I sincerely hope, Ben, that Justin is planning on pitching at year 42, because I got to say, Justin Verlander owes some payback to the Canadian community. Are you kidding me? This guy has come here not once, but twice with 2 different organizations in 2 different decades. I think it was even 2 different decades anyway, but not just one, but 2 no-hitters. And no, it wasn't because it was in Toronto and the exchange rate, 1 no-hitter became 2. No, he threw 2 actual no-hitters against the Toronto Blue Jays. So it's been a lot of pain, Ben, for the Blue Jays with Justin Verlander. Any chance, because I did see him last season say that he was literally close to becoming a Blue Jay last season. Do you think there's any chance that he would ever finish his career or be a Toronto Blue Jay?
Well, yeah, that statement is true. It was close to happening. Wow. And I absolutely look, Justin has been vocal about the fact that he wants to keep pitching as long as his body allows him. And the last 2 full seasons he's pitched, he has won the Cy Young Award. So I'd say he's on top of his game.
Is that good?
There's certainly some, I'm hopeful he pitches longer than his 42 year and his 43 year and keeps on going until he's 45 years old. So I would definitely say there's a chance, and the Blue Jays are going to be good for a long time to come. He clearly pitches very well there. Back on your point, I had on my show, Flippin' Bats, as you mentioned, last week. Last week, I had Rowdy Tellez on and was talking to him about we just had a long, great conversation. But at the end of it, I asked him the toughest pitcher that he's ever faced in his career. And he goes, "Is this a setup question?" And
wow.
I was like, "No, what do you mean?" And he goes, "I was on that team in 2019 that your brother no-hit in Toronto." And I was like, "Oh my God, I forgot you were on that team." And he was like, "Yeah, he dominated us. And then we had to go to the airport and stand right next to them in the line." Apparently the airport, to get back through, you have to go through customs. So they're just there with the general public. And he looks over and he like sees Justin with like a hat with a feather in it. And he's like, "God, that guy."
Oh my gosh. That is a
So, but yeah, Justin wants to pitch as long as his body will allow him, and who knows where that will be when the time comes.
So as if that's not bad enough, Ben, we've been no hit at home in front of our home crowd. As if that's not bad enough. Okay, you know what? Pack your stuff up. Let's head to the airport. Flush this one. Let's move on. And then at the airport, guys, right there. Look at the guy with the feather in the cap right there. Yeah, look familiar. Yeah. Like that is incredible. Wow. And also, Ben, I would love for the Blue Jays to go big game hunting. And this is the one where I am concerned. You may say, "Ooh, Craig, I am sorry to say no chance." Shohei Otani. Is there any chance Shohei Otani would call Canada home for the next decade, Ben?
Oh, man. This is a tough one. I think in a perfect world for Shohei, he wins on the Angels. I think that's the goal. He wants... I don't know, but I would think he's loyal to his team, but he's been very vocal about the fact that he wants to win. So I think 1A would be winning with the Angels. But then I start thinking about what are other options for him to go? What are some teams on a short list of where he would go to? And I haven't gotten to the point where the Blue Jays are on that short list of teams, but you never know. And what do I know? I would say I've just thought like, okay, if Shohei were to go anywhere, what are some teams? And I've come up with the Dodgers, the Padres, the Mariners, the Mets. And those are kind of the Mets simply just because Steve Cohen has the amount of money to say F you to everybody out there. I'm going to get Shohei Otani. And I think that would be the one like East Coast team he goes to. If you remember when this whole process started, East Coast teams weren't really on his radar. And I think Steve Cohen has the pockets to make that happen. But that's the one I've put on the East Coast.
And just one more quick thing on Shohei, because you mentioned the Dodgers. Is there any there here, Ben? Like, do you think, because the Dodgers, I feel like they brought in a big name free agent every year for a while now, didn't spend money seemingly, at least this offseason. Do you think now they've got young guys coming up, right? So that could be the reason. But do you think that a side order of that reason is because they are saving that money to throw an absolute ton at Shohei, especially if they're afraid that Cohen will get involved?
Oh, I think the reason we saw the Dodgers have the offseason they did is because of the upcoming Shohei sweepstakes that they believe is there. Look, we've become accustomed to it for the better part of a decade. We've become accustomed to the Dodgers trading for who they want to trade for because they have the system to do that and acquiring who they want to acquire ahead of the season. And they had one of the more quiet off seasons of anybody out there. And they were one of the teams that was above the threshold for the tax threshold. So they spent this offseason getting their books back in line, getting themselves back under the threshold, acquiring the money to be able to go all in the next offseason for a free agent, if he becomes a free agent, unlike we've ever seen before. A guy that I certainly think the number is going to start at $500 million to even be able to be in the running for him. So I definitely think, they have the young guys coming up. Their system is unbelievable. But still, even though it's been unbelievable for a while and we've seen them do what they want to do. So let's not think for 1 second that the Dodgers just decided to take a step back. I think they were sacrificing one offseason to go all in on the best, most talented player the game has seen.
Absolutely incredible to think that to get your call answered, to get a return text, you need to walk in the door at 500 million just to be in the conversation. And that's 500 million US, Ben. That's something that the Blue Jays have to consider, right? Because their funds come in Canadian. I know it sounds odd to say something like that, but that is the business aspect of things. So yes, I do think it's a long shot, but man, I mean, you certainly aren't going to be blaming me for dreaming big of Shohei. That I know. Every organization, I mean, who isn't, right? I get it.
Yeah.
Ben, what an absolute pleasure this was talking baseball with you. Ben, where can the good people follow you, the Flippin' Bats, all the good stuff, become immersed in your work?
Yeah, well, one, I appreciate you having me. I really do. This has been fun. I'm pretty on all social media. I'm at Ben Verlander, Twitter, Instagram. I'm on TikTok as well. And Flippin' Bats is my baby. That's my passion. I started the podcast this is the third season when I started at Fox, and it is all about growing the game, and that's my passion.
Awesome.
And interviewing some of the game's best players every week and talking about it Monday through Friday. So that's Flippin' Bats Pod. Anywhere you listen to podcasts, it's on Apple, it's on Spotify, it's even on YouTube. You can watch it. Have a beautiful set out here in LA in the Fox studios. So it's become it's my baby, and to see it become what it has. And look, people want to grow the game as well. And I'm a very positive, younger voice in the game. And it's very important to me.
Absolutely love that, Ben. Thank you so much. We'll let you get out of here. Appreciate your time, but I hope we'll talk again soon, Ben.
Of course. I appreciate you having me. I'll come back on anytime.
Thank you. That's a wrap for Tuesday's Locked On Blue Jays, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Join me tomorrow for the game preview of Wednesday's Blue Jays Astros series finale. Plus, we'll have some fun deep diving a significant number in Toronto Blue Jay franchise history. Now, finish off, I'll quote the late, great Tom Cheek, "Touch 'em all, Joe. You'll never hit a bigger home run in your life."